Sleep code. You drift into sleep, thinking it's rest, an idle state, a shutting down of systems. But your mind is not resting. Behind your closed eyes, something extraordinary begins, a kind of silent computation. Dreams flicker, symbols flash, memories rearrange themselves like scattered code aligning into form. This is not chaos. This is not illusion. This is sleep code, a nightly act of cognitive recalibration so intricate, so essential, that without it, the mind begins to fracture. The sleep code. Hypothesis proposes a simple but profound truth. Dreams are not random. They are the subconscious reorganizing, compressing, and debugging the software of your inner life. Every night, while you sleep, your mind runs silent scripts, sorting what matters, deleting what doesn't, re-encoding emotional experiences into a system of meaning that supports your waking identity. Think of the mind as a system overwhelmed with data. Every conversation you overhear, every detail you see but don't consciously notice, every micro-expression, worry, fragment of joy, all of it pours in during the day. It's too much to hold. So at night, the brain cleans house, but not blindly. It doesn't simply discard. It distills. It encodes. You dream of your childhood home, but now it floats in space. You see your old teacher cooking in your kitchen while the walls melt. It makes no rational sense, and yet it's perfect, because logic isn't the point. The dream is translating feeling into symbol, compressing volumes of sensory data and emotion into poetic code. You're not dreaming of people. You're dreaming of categories. You're not walking through places. You're traversing states of memory. You're not flying because you desire escape. You're flying because some emotional thread inside you is being untangled, rewritten, made breathable again. In this dream code, objects don't stay still. Faces shift. Language dissolves. Time collapses. These aren't bugs. They're features of the processing system. The mind is mapping concepts, not forms. And once you understand that, you realize every dream is a line of code written by your deeper self to your future self. Why do some dreams repeat? Why do the same rooms, the same doors, the same unresolved faces come back again and again? Because that section of your internal script hasn't compiled yet. It's stuck in a loop. The error isn't fixed. The grief isn't metabolized. The pattern isn't integrated. So the dream shows up again and again, not to torment you, but to finish its work. Sometimes that dream never resolves. Sometimes it needs your conscious cooperation. That's where lucid dreaming becomes powerful, not just as a playground, but as a programming interface. When you realize you're dreaming, you can participate in the process. You can ask questions, face the thing you always ran from, change the outcome, rewrite the code. But even if you're not lucid, your mind is still working with precision. It's mapping trauma, building symbolic bridges over broken memories, and updating your emotional firmware. You wake feeling lighter, not because the dream was nice, but because it finished a process you didn't know was running. There's even a darker implication here. If dreams are part of your psychological code base, then what happens when you don't dream? What happens when you disrupt the code too often? Sleep deprivation, trauma, or excessive stimulation before bed? You wake fragmented. You forget more. You can't concentrate. You can't regulate emotion. Because the scripts didn't run. The system didn't reset. You're carrying corrupted memory blocks into your day. This is why so many spiritual and psychological traditions treat sleep as sacred. Because it's not unconsciousness, it's active healing. You are not turning off. You are turning inward, repairing, realigning. You are programming the self you will become. And it goes further still. If sleep is code, then dreams may hold compressed truths beyond language. Some of the most transformative human insights, music, equations, poetry, visions, have emerged from dreams, not from reason, but from encoded intuition. The mind, working without interruption, without ego, without distraction, delivers revelations in a single stroke, a melody, a symbol, a word that unlocks everything. So the next time you wake up from a strange dream, don't dismiss it. Log it. Sit with it. It may feel surreal, but it is data, compressed, encrypted, and delivered from the deepest layers of your being. You won't decode it all at once, but over time, if you pay attention, a pattern will emerge. You'll see the bugs in your thinking. You'll see the lines of fear you didn't write, but inherited. You'll catch the loops, the contradictions, the places where grief was mistaken for identity, where shame was embedded as truth. And little by little, you'll start debugging the myth of who you think you are. Archetype, fog. Sometimes you wake from a dream with a face still etched into your memory. A figure who felt important, familiar, powerful, or terrifying. You don't know their name. You've never seen them before. And yet, the feeling lingers. They weren't just a stranger. They were something more, something symbolic. This is the archetype fog. that strange, soft blur where the figures in your dream are not people now, but patterns. Not characters, but codes. When you dream, your mind often doesn't summon memories. It summons meanings. And meanings come dressed in masks. You see a mother, but she's not your mother. You see a warrior, but he's not from any place you know. You encounter a child, fragile and glowing, who says things beyond their years. These are not hallucinations. They are representations. They are the archetypes, stepping forward through the fog of your subconscious. Carl Jung spoke of these ancient figures, not as fantasies, but as primordial blueprints etched into the collective psyche of humanity. The hero, the orphan, the trickster, the sage, the devourer. Each one carries a theme, a lesson, a confrontation. In waking life, they may remain dormant, but in sleep, when ego dissolves and identity relaxes, the archetypes rise through the fog. They speak in gesture, in tone, in feeling. They appear not to explain, but to remind. Why remind? Because these figures are not external. They are fragments of you, assembled not from biography, but from experience, from the stories passed down through culture, bloodline, memory. They are not just symbols. They are the emotional architecture of the human mind. They speak to you because they are within you. In the archetype, fog, distinctions blur. You may become the hero, only to morph into the villain. You may kiss the face of the beloved, only to find the face shifting into your own. You might run from a beast, only to realize it is your shame, given form. This shifting isn't confusion. It's integration. The fog is not hiding the truth. It's revealing that truth was never singular to begin with. Some dreams feel mythic without explanation. Fighting through a desert to reach a door, protecting a child from a faceless army, dancing on the edge of a crumbling tower. These are not plot points. They are parables. Your mind is rehearsing something timeless. Perhaps you're facing a decision in waking life you can't name, but the dream replays the story of sacrifice, of betrayal, of ascension. It doesn't say, choose this. It says, this is the kind of choice this is. The fog doesn't lie. It reframes. And yet, the fog frustrates, because these dreams rarely give answers. They leave impressions, feelings that cling like mist. You wake and remember the look in someone's eyes and the color of the sky, the moment you said something you've never said aloud. You know it mattered, but you don't know why. That's the nature of the archetype. It resonates more than it explains. And resonance is how the soul listens. Somewhere beneath the fog is a self older than your name. A self that doesn't care for logic, but recognizes patterns of becoming. You are not the first to feel abandoned, to fight for dignity, to stand at a threshold and not know what waits on the other side. Archetypes exist because the journey exists. And dreams, those shadowed myths of the night, bring them back to you when you most need to remember. You might dream of a giant door you cannot open. That's not a puzzle. It's a symbol of a blocked initiation. You might speak to a blind woman in the dream who warns you of something coming. That's not fear. It's the seer within you, reminding you to trust the knowing that has no words. And the beauty of the archetype fog is that no two people walk through it the same way. The warrior may appear to one as a friend, to another as a storm, to another as a broken statue. But the energy is the same. The lesson, dressed differently, still arrives. You don't need to name every dream figure. You don't need to decode them like puzzles. You only need to feel what they stir. Ask, what part of me does this figure reflect? What wound? What lesson? What myth is my psyche trying to reawaken? Because when the fog lifts, just slightly, you'll see that your dream was not chaos. It was choreography. You weren't lost. You were being guided through the stories that shaped civilizations, through the emotions too complex for daylight, through the architecture of every human soul. The archetype. Fog may never clear completely. It's not supposed to. Its purpose is not to reveal, but to resonate. Not to teach, but to remember. So the next time you meet a figure in your dreams, you cannot explain. Honor them. Not for who they are, but for what they awaken. Because in that moment, you are not just dreaming. You are walking through the architecture of myth, hand in hand with the parts of you that know the way, the shadow. There are dreams that leave you shaken, not because they were filled with monsters or chaos, but because you saw something you weren't ready to see. You didn't run from a beast. You didn't fall from the sky. You looked into a face, and it looked back. A face that carried your shape, but none of your warmth. A version of you, familiar, yet unsettling. Angry, cold, honest. This is the shadow. The part of yourself you've spent your waking life avoiding, only for it to rise, uninvited, when the lights go out. In psychology, the shadow is everything we repress. The envy, the shame, the rage, the hunger. It's not evil. It's not darkness in the moral sense. It's just the truth we're unwilling to claim. In the daylight world, we curate ourselves. We show kindness, humility, self-control. We convince others and ourselves that we are whole. But the self doesn't disappear when ignored. It waits. It watches. And in dreams, it speaks. The shadow doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. A moment in a dream when you act out of character, when you hurt someone without guilt, when you betray, when you watch yourself lie. You wake confused. That's not me. But it is. It's the part of you that you've exiled, the voice you've muted, the desire you've judged, the wound you've disguised as virtue. Dreams are honest, brutally so. They bypass your justifications, your roles, your stories. And when the dream brings the shadow to the surface, it isn't trying to punish you. It's trying to reintegrate you. Because no one becomes whole by hiding their contradictions. You don't heal by staying comfortable. You heal by facing the thing you most fear being. Sometimes the shadow appears as a figure you fight. Sometimes it takes the form of someone you hate, only to realize, by the end of the dream, that it was you all along. Other times, it doesn't wear a face. It's just a weight, a silence, a moral unraveling that leaves you breathless when you wake. These are not nightmares. They are mirrors, and they reflect not who you show the world, but who you locked away. The shadow can't be reasoned with. It doesn't negotiate. It emerges when the cracks grow wide enough. when your performance starts to fail. When the image of the person you're pretending to be can no longer carry the truth of who you really are. That's when it comes, not to destroy you, but to return you. You see, wholeness isn't purity. It's complexity. It's contradiction. It's the wisdom to say, yes, I am this too. The shadow holds your raw material, the parts of you that were too bold, too loud, too broken, too needy to be accepted. So you buried them. But they didn't die. They dream. They wait for the night. In Jungian psychology, engaging with the shadow is the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are. And dreams are the arena, the stage, the ritual space where your inner cast reveals itself. Some will charm you. Others will horrify you. But all of them are you. What happens if you ignore the shadow? It doesn't disappear. It leaks into projection, into resentment, into sabotage, into addictions you can't name, and fears you can't face. The parts of yourself you refuse to see will find a way to be seen, through dreams, through breakdowns, through the quiet implosions of the unexamined life. But if you turn toward the shadow, if you stop running, something unexpected happens. You begin to reclaim your power. The energy you once spent suppressing becomes clarity, confidence, compassion. Not the sweet kind, but the real kind. The kind that can send with contradiction and still love. In your dreams, the shadow isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to be heard. It shows you the choices you've denied, the truths you've diluted, the hunger you've pathologized. It shows you what's been waiting beneath the mask of who you think you're supposed to be. So when you next find yourself face to face with a dream that feels too raw, too shameful, too close, don't turn away. Listen. Sit with it. Ask, what part of me have I locked in the basement of my psyche? What truth have I made into a monster? Because when you name the shadow, it loses its grip. When you give it space, it becomes a guide. It doesn't want dominance. It wants recognition. And once seen, it can stop haunting. You are not just the light. You are also the dark hallway, the closed door, the breathless silence. And when you can carry all of that without fear, then, and only then, are you truly awake. Dream bleed. You wake up and something feels wrong. Not terrifying, not dramatic, just off. The room's familiar, but not quite right. The air feels heavier. Your body's here, but your mind, your feeling, is elsewhere. You go about your day, but there's a strange echo following you. A memory you didn't make. A sorrow you didn't earn. A thought that doesn't belong. And slowly, you realize the dream never ended. You're still inside it, somehow. This is dream bleed, the eerie phenomenon when the boundaries between dreaming and waking start to dissolve. We like to believe dreams are sealed off. They begin when we sleep. They end when we open our eyes. But what if that's an illusion? What if some dreams leak, softly, invisibly, into waking life? What if the bleed is real? It begins with residue. You dream of someone who doesn't exist, and yet you miss them for days. You dream of a city that never was, and now every alley you walk feels like a shadow of it. You wake from a nightmare, and the fear doesn't fade. It morphs. It follows. Like fog clinging to the skin long after the rain has stopped. But sometimes it's more than emotional residue. Sometimes the bleed is behavioral. You make a decision you can't explain. You avoid a place for no rational reason. You say something and realize, mid-sentence, it wasn't yours. That idea, that image, that instinct, it came from somewhere else, somewhere that doesn't exist on the map, but lived fully in your dream the night before. Dream bleed isn't just poetic. It's neurological. Studies have shown that during REM sleep, the brain activates many of the same regions involved in conscious memory, emotion, and imagination. But when you wake, not all those connections shut down immediately. Some remain active, some stay open. And in that vulnerability, the dream leaks. Its symbols, its moods, its architecture, they don't disappear. They reappear, subtly, as gut feelings, as images behind your eyes, as a tone you can't shake. And the more vivid the dream, the more it bleeds. Lucid dreams, recurring dreams, prophetic flickers, they all carry weight because the mind treats them not as illusions, but as experiences. To the brain, a dream of drowning is not metaphor. It is an encoded moment, a lesson, a memory. And memory doesn't need to be real to shape you. But here's where dream bleed gets even stranger. Sometimes you wake with knowledge you didn't have. A phrase in another language, an answer to a question you hadn't fully asked. A clarity that cuts through months of confusion. And you don't know why you know it, only that it came from a place without time, a place that didn't follow logic, a place that only opens when you're not trying to open it. Artists speak of this often. A melody heard in a dream that won't stop playing. Writers dream entire chapters. Scientists wake with solutions to problems they couldn't solve by day. These aren't coincidences. They are bleed-throughs. The subconscious, having worked unobserved, quietly delivers its findings. Not with fanfare, but with force. Sometimes the bleed isn't helpful. Sometimes it's terrifying. A nightmare refuses to let go. You keep seeing the same face on strangers. You flinch when you hear a sound that only existed in your sleep. You feel like something is following you, though you know it's not real. But it feels real. That's dream bleed too. The mind bringing trauma, anxiety, or suppressed truths to the surface, not just in symbolic form, but as lived sensation. And then there are the days when reality itself feels like a dream. The light bends strangely. Time skips. Your reflection feels delayed. These moments are rare, but when they happen, they leave you shaken. It's as if the bleed reversed. This world became the dream, and the dream became more real than the floor beneath your feet. What do you do then? How do you walk through a world where dream and waking blur? The answer isn't to resist. It's to observe. The bleed is not your enemy. It's a message, a continuation. Your subconscious doesn't stop speaking just because the sun rose. It keeps whispering through patterns, through déjà vu, through instinct and impulse. Dream bleed reminds us that the barrier between states of consciousness is not a wall. It's a membrane, thin, porous, always shifting. What happens in one state echoes into the other. You are not one person at night and another by day. You are a continuum, a mind stretching between worlds. So the next time you feel a mood you can't name, a knowing you can't trace, a sadness that doesn't belong to your waking life, pause. Don't push it away. Ask, what is still speaking? What part of my dream followed me here? Because maybe it didn't follow you at all. Maybe you never fully left. Future. Memory. You're walking down a street you've never seen, yet every detail feels strangely familiar. The chipped stone wall, the sound of distant footsteps, the scent of rain on sun-warmed pavement. You know what's around the corner before you turn. You feel the weight of a decision before it's made. You've never lived this moment, but somehow you've already remembered it. This is future memory, the quiet paradox where the mind seems to recall what hasn't happened yet. Most people call it déjà vu, and science has its theories. A neurological misfire, a brief overlap in memory processing, a delay between perception and awareness. But future memory goes beyond a momentary flicker. It's not just a feeling, it's a narrative, a dream that plays out days, weeks, or even years later in waking life. And when it happens, the sensation isn't excitement. It's a slow, almost eerie calm, a knowing that lands like a stone in still water. I've been here before, but how can that be? How can a future event be remembered? Some say it's coincidence, that in the infinite swirl of daily experience, occasionally a dream will just happen to resemble life. But those who've lived it know better. They remember dreams so vivid, so impossible to explain, that when the moment finally arrives, it's not a question of similarity. It's a perfect match. You dream of a conversation, and years later, word for word, it unfolds. You see someone's face before you meet them. You stand in a place you've never visited and feel the overwhelming sense that you're not discovering. It's recollection. One explanation suggests that time, in the subconscious, may not be linear. That during sleep, when the mind is freed from the rigid sequence of past to present, it may drift sideways. Dip into probabilities, brush against outcomes that have not yet occurred. Dreams become a form of time travel, not in the physical sense, but in the experiential one. You're not seeing the future. You're feeling it. And your memory records it just as it would a lived event. This theory bends the brain. We're trained to believe memory only flows backward, that we remember the past, anticipate the future, and nothing more. But what if memory is not bound by chronology? What if it's about resonance, and anything with enough emotional charge, past or future, leaves an imprint? Sometimes these future memories arrive not through dreams, but sudden flashes, waking visions with no cause, a gut sense of what's coming. But most often, they emerge in sleep. That's where the veil is thinnest. That's where logic is suspended, and knowing is allowed to speak without interruption. Why does the mind offer us these glimpses? Some say it's to prepare us, that by dreaming the future, we soften its impact. We create a cushion around the unknown. Others believe it's a signal that time is not a river, but an ocean. And in sleep, we drift beyond the shore of what's already known. But there's another layer to this. Future memory may not just be about what will be. It might also be about what could be. A possibility, not a promise. A map of one path among many. And the dream becomes a whisper. If you keep going this way, this is where you might arrive. That's why some future memories don't come true. The dream unfolds with stunning clarity, but the event never materializes. You changed course. Someone else did. The timeline bent, and the dream, in retrospect, becomes a relic of a road not taken. But that doesn't make it false. It makes it real in potential. A memory from an unrealized life. In this way, dreams become both mirrors and maps. They show us who we are by revealing who we might become. They nudge us, warn us. Sometimes they gift us moments we won't understand for years, until one ordinary day we recognize the scene and realize the memory came first. Future memory humbles the mind. It reminds us that time is not as fixed as it seems, that sleep is not passive, that every night you might touch a version of tomorrow that is whispering back to you through fog and symbol and silence. So the next time you dream something that feels important, write it down. Sit with it. Not in obsession, but in reverence. Because one day, when the light bends just right, and the wind carries that familiar sound, you might realize you're living a memory you haven't made yet. And in that moment, you will not feel surprised. You will feel like something inside you has come home, dream language. You wake with a phrase on your lips, words that feel ancient, luminous, unfamiliar. A sentence spoken in the dream that carried weight far beyond its meaning. You don't remember the grammar. You don't know the language, but you felt it. You felt it like a vibration through the bones, a truth not spoken, but transferred. This is dream language, a form of communication that doesn't obey syntax or sound, but still reaches you with clarity deeper than comprehension. We are so conditioned to associate language with words, with letters, grammar, definition. But the dreaming mind is not interested in dictionaries. It speaks in symbol, in gesture, in feeling. It forms sentences out of landscapes, metaphors out of movement. A door left ajar, a bird that won't stop circling, a single eye hovering in the sky. These are not random images. They are phrases, written in the grammar of the subconscious. You might dream of walking down a hallway that keeps narrowing until you can't move. That's a sentence. You might dream of a voice calling your name, but never showing its face. That's a paragraph. These sequences are not meant to be translated into literal language. They are meant to be absorbed, like poetry, whose meaning bypasses intellect and goes straight to instinct. Some dreams do use spoken words, but they don't behave like language we know. Sometimes it's a whisper that reverberates, a voice that speaks from nowhere and everywhere. Sometimes the language is not in the words, but in the tone, a frequency that resonates like music you've never heard, but always known. People report dreaming in languages they've never studied, speaking fluently in tongues that carry a logic not of culture, but of feeling. This is the paradox of dream language. It is more precise because it is abstract. It carries truth, not bound by linearity. It holds emotion, memory, warning, and insight in a single image, a single moment. The mind compresses meaning into symbol, far more efficiently than waking language ever could. Consider a recurring dream. You're underwater, trying to scream, but no sound comes out. That's not just fear. That's the subconscious screaming, I have something to say, but I cannot speak it here. That dream is a letter, a message, and every time it repeats, it's trying to find a way to be heard. Artists, mystics, and poets have long known this. The dream is not separate from language. It is older than language. Before there were words, there were symbols. Before we explained our inner world, we performed it, danced it, painted it. And even now, in sleep, our brains return to that ancient mode of expression. Dream language can be subtle, a color that dominates the frame, a gesture repeated, a moment frozen, or it can be overwhelming. A voice so powerful it wakes you, a sound that echoes for days, a vision that arrives complete, like a revelation. The key to understanding dream language is not translation, it's attention. Ask yourself, not, what does it mean, but what did I feel when it happened? Dreams do not speak to your intellect. They speak to your core. And what they say depends not on logic, but on your willingness to listen sideways. In some spiritual traditions, the dream world is a realm of teaching. Ancestors speak in riddles. Spirits guide through stories. The lessons are not handed to you. They unfold through signs. Signs that only make sense once you've lived long enough to see the connections. And so, dreamers become interpreters, not of language in the traditional sense, but of symbolic resonance. There's a reason dream dictionaries feel so unsatisfying. They try to fix meanings to images. But in dream language, a snake doesn't always mean fear. A storm doesn't always mean chaos. The meaning changes with context, with timing, with you. You are the grammar. You are the key. And this is the most important truth about dream language. It is personal. No two people speak it exactly the same. Your mind invents its own dialect, built from memory, culture, emotion, and imagination. What means joy to you may mean terror to someone else. The dream doesn't care about consensus. It cares about authenticity. So the next time you wake from a dream and say, I don't know what that meant, stop. Ask instead, what part of me was trying to speak? What image came to carry a message no word could hold? What phrase, written in symbol and sensation, tried to tell you what you couldn't yet admit? Dream language isn't broken. It's just different. It's not confusing. It's dense. It's not illogical. It's multi-dimensional. And if you learn to sit with its strangeness, if you learn to trust the images, the moods, the silence, you might discover that some of the truest things you've ever known were spoken while you slept. Soul training. You close your eyes and drift into sleep, expecting rest. But something else happens. You're walking through an unfamiliar city. You're asked to solve a riddle by a figure who feels older than time. You're facing someone you've wronged. You're learning to forgive. You're falling again and again until you find the strength to stop. And when you wake, you feel exhausted, not physically, but spiritually. You haven't just dreamed, you've trained. This is soul training, the quiet, nightly work your deeper self engages in while the body lies still. We think of dreams as stories, as strange images, as echoes. But sometimes they are none of those things. Sometimes dreams are arenas, places where your soul is rehearsing a truth it cannot yet live in waking life. You are not just watching. You are participating, practicing, becoming. You dream of speaking up in a room where no one listens. You do it again and again. Different words, different tones, until one night your voice is heard. You wake with a trembling certainty. This is the day you will speak what you've never dared to say. That is soul training. The dream was a rehearsal, a preparation for a threshold your waking self is finally ready to cross. Soul training. Dreams are not always gentle. They are often uncomfortable, sometimes terrifying. You relive old wounds. You fail tests. You walk through scenarios that make your heart ache or your pride burn. But they are not punishments. They are initiations. And the lessons they offer are not intellectual. They are experiential. In these dreams, you don't analyze your trauma. You live it. You don't talk about courage. You're thrown into situations where courage is your only option. You don't read about compassion. You're asked to forgive someone who doesn't deserve it. These are not metaphors. These are trainings. And the soul does not waste time on abstract theory. It uses the dreamscape as a place to simulate evolution. Sometimes the training is practical. You're navigating danger, solving puzzles, learning to trust your instinct. You're developing inner muscle, agility, adaptability, awareness. Other times, the training is deeply emotional. You're placed in a moment where your usual defense breaks down. You cry in the dream and wake up lighter, as if something heavy had finally passed through you. There are people who dream repeatedly of the same place, the same conflict, the same impossible choice. And they don't realize the repetition is the training. The soul returning to the same arena, not because it's stuck, but because it's refining. Each time, a little more insight, a little more courage, a little more surrender. Think of it like this. Your body goes to the gym to build strength. Your mind reads to gather knowledge. But where does your soul practice? Where does it rehearse the things that can't be taught with words? It does so in the dream. Not every night, not every dream. But in those rare, intense moments when the dream feels like something more, that's when the training begins. Sometimes the lesson doesn't make sense until later. A year from now, you'll face a challenge, a confrontation, a grief, and instead of collapsing, you'll know exactly what to do. Not because you were taught, but because you remembered. Somewhere, deep in a forgotten dream, you lived this already. That is the mystery of soul training. It is invisible in the moment. You may wake and forget the details, but the effect remains. You are braver, quieter, wiser. Your response to life shifts. Your presence deepens. And no one can explain why, not even you. But your soul knows. Some people dismiss dreams that feel too structured. That felt like a movie, they say. Or that dream had levels, like a video game. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the dream organizes itself not for entertainment, but for instruction. And perhaps you were not the player. You were the student. There is a theory, present in many spiritual traditions, that life is a classroom, that the soul incarnates not for comfort, but for growth. If that's true, then dreams are the midnight curriculum, the secret syllabus, the lessons that can only be taught when the ego steps aside. So pay attention to the dreams that feel more than personal, the ones that leave you breathless, the ones that change you in ways you can't describe. You are not just a dreamer. You are a disciple, a seeker, a soul in training. And every time you fall asleep, you may be stepping into a temple not made of stone, but of symbol. A school with no name, but infinite wisdom. Because the soul does not rest when the body does. It works, it learns, it becomes, it wisht. Dimensional overlap. You're standing in a room that looks like your childhood kitchen, but the windows face a city skyline you've never seen. You're speaking to a loved one long gone, yet they feel alive, unchanged. You reach for a door, and suddenly the walls melt into a field under moonlight. You don't question it, not in the dream. You move between these worlds, like it's natural, like it's allowed. This is dimensional overlap, the bleeding of realities, where dreams reveal that existence is not confined to a single thread. We like to think of reality as fixed, one timeline, one version of events. But in dreams, that logic unravels. You walk through memories that never happened. You remember things you've never known. You speak truths you've never been taught. And what's more, those experiences change you, not as fantasy, but as reality. Because the dream didn't just simulate a world, it invited you into another one. In the theory of dimensional overlap, dreams are not internal projections. They are intersections, points where multiple versions of self, place, and time intersect, briefly, quietly, beneath the veil of sleep. While the body rests in one world, the mind drifts through others, brushing against the echoes of lives you never lived, choices you never made, people you never met, but might have. This isn't about science fiction. It's not about parallel Earths with different flags or cities in the clouds. It's more subtle, more personal. You may walk through a version of your home, but one where a decision long buried, like taking a job, saying yes, walking away, was made differently. And everything feels off, but also true. Like memory from a life that still touches yours, even if it doesn't fully belong. Some dreams bring this overlap gently. A change in detail. A glance from a friend who feels like family, but isn't. Other dreams bring it violently. You find yourself hunted by a version of yourself. You watch as a version of your life burns to the ground while you stand helplessly outside. These dreams don't just provoke fear. They provoke recognition. And the question that follows is one we rarely ask aloud. Which version of me is the real one? Dimensional overlap doesn't require belief. You don't need to subscribe to metaphysics or quantum mechanics. All it takes is attention. Because the evidence is not in the theory. It's in the feeling. That unmistakable sense of depth, of doubleness that lingers after certain dreams. A feeling that says, I touched something I wasn't supposed to, and it touched me back. There are moments in dreams When you look at your own hands, and they're older, or not your own, you remember events that never happened. You speak languages you've never studied. You look into the sky and see constellations that don't exist here, but you know them. This is not error. This is signal. The boundary between timelines has thinned. Your subconscious crossed a threshold, and what it brought back was more than image. It was information. In some ancient traditions, dreams are portals. Shamans, monks, seers, they've long believed that the dreamer becomes a traveler, that sleep is not retreat, but journey, not fantasy, but exploration. In this view, the soul doesn't stay anchored to one life. It drifts. It gathers. It remembers what the waking mind forgets. And this is the gift and the burden of dimensional overlap. It brings you closer to the self you might have been. It shows you the roads not taken, not to make you regret, but to expand you, to remind you that your identity is not a single point. It is a constellation. Some lights closer, others dimmed by time. But all of them, in some way, still yours. You may wake from these dreams disoriented. You may feel like a stranger in your own life for a few hours. You may feel a longing for something that doesn't exist here. That's not confusion. That's contact. The residue of another version of you, still echoing. So what do you do with it? You don't try to explain it away. You witness it. You allow it to show you the shape of what might also be true. The version of love you never pursued. The strength you didn't know you had. The loss you've never lived, but still feel. Each one carries a key. A glimpse. A piece of the whole you'll never fully name, but must try to hold anyway. Because life is not linear, and neither are you. You are not bound to one reality, one version of self, one path. You are a meeting place, a crossing point, a layered song playing in chords you cannot always hear. And sometimes, in dreams, the veil thins just enough for one chord to touch another. And when it does, you remember, even if you can't explain what. Recurring patterns. You find yourself back in the same hallway again. The wallpaper may shift, the lighting may change, but you know this place. You've run through it, hid in it, lost something in it. Over the years, it returns. Different scenes, different seasons, but always the same feeling. This is no coincidence. This is recurring patterns, a phenomenon in dreams where repetition isn't mistake, but message. Most people experience them. A dream that plays over and over with slight variations. A specific person who returns long after they've vanished from waking life. A building you don't recognize, but have walked through 100 times in sleep. At first, we brush it off. Maybe it's stress. Maybe it's memory. But what if it's more intentional than that? The subconscious isn't random. It's precise. And when a particular pattern repeats itself, especially through dreams, it's not looping aimlessly. It's trying to resolve, to reveal, to rewire. Dreams operate like memory compost. Everything unresolved gets layered and buried. But when the time is right, something stirs. An image pushes upward. A pattern reemerges. It's your mind saying, "We're not done here. There's something you missed." Recurring patterns often center around themes of tension, unspoken conversations, unfinished journeys, unresolved identity. You dream of taking the same exam, but never finishing it, missing the same train, night after night, running from someone who never reaches you. These aren't just anxieties, they're cycles. And until they're addressed, they replay, sometimes for years. But here's where it gets deeper. Each time the dream returns, it changes, slightly. A door that was locked is now ajar. A face you couldn't see now turns to look at you. The setting shifts from dusk to dawn. These micro-adjustments are clues. They mark progress. Like chapters in a dream story only your soul can read. Patterns persist because there is something inside you still in motion, still forming, still asking to be felt. And the dream isn't punishing you with repetition. It's offering you another chance to turn toward what you turned away from, to say what you never said, to walk through what you always ran from. For some, the pattern ends abruptly. Once a breakthrough happens in waking life, you finally confront a fear. You write the letter. You walk away from something that never served you. And then, just like that, the dream stops. The pattern dissolves, not because it vanished, but because it completed. Others find the pattern continues for years, decades. And that, too, is sacred. It means your inner world is still sculpting something delicate, still preparing the ground for a truth that can't be rushed. There are also patterns within patterns. You may dream in threes, 3 staircases, 3 storms, 3 versions of yourself. These numbers are not filler. They are symbolic structure. Your subconscious uses form to create rhythm. Repetition with slight variance is how the deepest truths are slowly earned, not just delivered. In some cultures, recurring dreams are seen as ancestral echoes, spirits returning to guide, not haunt. The same symbols repeating because a message has not yet been received. And often, it's only through reflection, journaling, meditation, patient attention, that their meaning begins to surface. But here's what makes recurring patterns most profound. They become companions, not always comforting, but undeniably loyal. They walk beside you through life, changing as you change, reminding you of the path beneath your path. Eventually, you may come to anticipate them, even welcome them. The familiar hallway, the repeated conversation, the dream that begins the way it always does, but ends differently. Because you acted, you chose, you listened. That's when the pattern shifts, not just in the dream, but in your waking life. Your responses change, your habits soften, a rigidity loosens. Because the truth is, we don't just dream patterns, we live them. And by working with them in sleep, we transform them in day. So when your dream returns for the 3rd, 5th, 50th time, don't dismiss it. Ask what part of you is still circling, what moment still seeks closure, what truth still waits to be spoken. You're not stuck. You're in process. The dream is not looping. It's leading. And maybe, just maybe, when the time is right, you'll reach the end of the hallway. The train will arrive. The conversation will finish. And you'll wake not just rested, but changed. Dream visitors. You open your eyes in a dream, and someone is already there, watching, waiting. Sometimes they speak your name with tenderness. Sometimes they stare without emotion. You don't know who they are, not in the waking sense, but you feel like you've always known them. They are not constructs of your memory. They arrive from elsewhere. And when you wake, their presence lingers in the room, like smoke after a fire. These are the dream visitors, figures who enter our sleep not as fragments of our own minds, but as encounters. Most dreams revolve around us, our fears, our past, our desires, rearranged into story. But some dreams don't feel like that. Some dreams carry the unmistakable weight of someone else. Their words don't sound like our internal dialogue. Their presence disrupts the flow. And we wake not wondering what it meant, but who they were. There are those who believe these visitors are simply projections, archetypes in new clothes, pieces of ourselves we haven't integrated yet. And perhaps that's true, sometimes. But not always, because sometimes these visitors know things we don't. They offer information we couldn't have invented. They tell us news. They issue warnings. They describe places we've never been, and yet recognize later in waking life. They bring gifts we never asked for, and leave us with questions we can't answer. There are stories shared across cultures of dreams where the dead appear, not in ghostly terror, but in quiet visitation. A grandmother who whispers a phrase the dreamer never knew, only to discover it was a family saying. A friend long gone who says, "It's not your fault," and walks away. These are not hallucinations. They are moments of contact. Their message doesn't always unfold immediately, but it leaves a crack, a shift, a knowing. Dream visitors don't always take human form. Some appear as animals, as light, as storms that speak. Others arrive wordlessly, communicating through presence alone. They don't need names. They don't seek recognition. They carry meaning, not identity. And that's what makes them unforgettable. Sometimes they come once. Sometimes they return. A man in a long coat who shows up every 5 years. A child who leads you to a specific door in 3 different dreams. A woman who never speaks but always arrives when you're at your lowest. These recurring visitors don't follow your narrative. They seem to have one of their own, and you're just part of it. This raises questions that don't have easy answers. Who are they? Where do they come from? Are they parts of our unconscious, collective memory, spiritual entities, parallel selves? No theory satisfies every case. And maybe that's the point. Maybe dream visitors exist at the edge of our understanding, not to be explained, but felt, not to be categorized, but welcomed, with humility, with attention. What unites these experiences isn't just mystery, it's the impression. That deep, visceral certainty. That was not me. And that kind of knowing is rare. It bypasses belief systems. It sits under logic. And it leaves behind a trace you carry for days, months, sometimes years. Children often report dream visitors. They don't doubt them. They describe them with specificity. They remember what they wore, what they said, where they stood. And then, slowly, we teach them to forget, to label it as imagination. But maybe they weren't confused. Maybe they were receptive, less filtered, more attuned to the visitors that still come for us all. What if these visitors come with purpose, to offer insight, to test readiness, to protect, to awaken. You dream of being lost in a labyrinth, and someone silently walks ahead of you with a lantern. You never catch up. But when you wake, the fear has lifted, or perhaps they bring discomfort, a warning you refused to see by day, a confrontation you need to prepare for. The point is not to decode every detail. The point is to acknowledge the encounter, to say, I saw something. I felt someone. I was not alone. Whether visitor, spirit, archetype, or subconscious voice, something arrived to meet you. And when you wake, the only question that truly matters is not, was it real? It's, will I listen? Because not all dreams are solitary. And sometimes the most important part of sleep is who shows up in it. Dream inheritance. You have a dream, and in that dream, you are grieving something you never lost. You feel the weight of a sorrow you've never lived. You see landscapes you've never visited, hear music you've never heard. But your heart responds as if they are familiar. There's no logic to this recognition, no memory you can trace. And yet, it's there, clear, deep, unshakable. This is dream inheritance, the haunting and mysterious way we seem to carry not only our own unconscious, but echoes of lives that came before us. Science calls it genetic memory. Psychology calls it transgenerational trauma. Mythology calls it ancestral knowledge. But in dreams, none of those terms matter. What matters is the feeling, that sudden, overwhelming sense that you are not only dreaming for yourself, that what you're experiencing is part of a lineage, a memory passed not through words or photographs, but through blood, through silence, through sleep. You may dream of being chased by a faceless authority, of hiding with your family in cramped walls, of crossing a sea under night skies. You wake confused. Nothing in your life matches the dream. But your grandparents were refugees. Your ancestors were exiled. And though they never told you their stories, somehow you dreamed them. That's dream inheritance. Sometimes it comes as trauma, sometimes as strength. A grandmother's song, a ritual you've never seen, but performed perfectly in your sleep. A language your tongue forms in the dream, though you've never studied it. A burial ground, a celebration, a secret. You are not remembering. You are receiving. Dream inheritance doesn't come like a lecture. It comes in fragments. You'll dream of holding a tool with expert hands, only to later discover it was once used by your great-grandfather. You'll hear a lullaby, then, months later, stumble upon it in an old recording. These are not tricks. They are transmissions. Encoded whispers from the long departed, traveling through the only place untouched by time, sleep. There are cultures that understand this deeply. In many indigenous traditions, dreams are not private. They are collective. They are how the dead speak, how the lineage communicates. A child who dreams of an unfamiliar forest may be seen as receiving guidance from a forgotten ancestor who once hunted there. A woman who dreams of fire may be carrying the warning of something once survived. Dreams are not entertainment. They are inheritance. But why do these dreams come? And why to some more than others? Often, it's about readiness. The subconscious recognizes when the conscious mind is capable of carrying something that once was too heavy. You may have inherited not just memory, but unspoken burdens, grief that was never wept, rage that was silenced, longing that had no place to go. The dream doesn't bring it to punish you. It brings it to release it, to allow the unprocessed to move, finally, through someone willing to feel it. Sometimes, dream inheritance brings wisdom. You face a challenge and dream of an old figure who walks with you, who hands you an object, who nods in silence. You wake changed, not because you understood, but because you absorbed. The soul does not always need explanation. Sometimes it only needs contact. And then there's this. Perhaps what we inherit isn't only from the past. Perhaps we also dream for those who come after. Perhaps our deepest realizations, our quiet awakenings, our unspoken reconciliations, perhaps they echo forward. And one day, a child not yet born will dream of peace they never had to earn, because someone, long ago, made it possible in sleep. Dream inheritance humbles us. It reminds us that we are not separate, that our lives are chapters in books far older than we imagine, that to dream is to open a door in both directions, backward to the ones who dreamed us into being, and forward to the ones who will carry our unfinished songs. So when you wake from a dream that doesn't belong to you, but moves you, pay attention. Ask, whose memory did I borrow tonight? What part of my lineage is asking to be seen? Because in that moment, you are not just a dreamer. You are an heir, and your sleep is the ceremony. Unlived paths. You wake up and feel different. Not because of what happened in the dream, but because of who you were. You were living in another city, working a job you never pursued. You had a partner you've never met. You spoke with confidence you've never owned. It wasn't fantasy. It wasn't surreal. It was real. So real that for a few moments after waking, you grieved it. The life that wasn't. The version of you that lived. This is unlived paths. The dreams that explore who we might have become had we turned slightly left instead of right. We tend to think of dreams as reflections, mirrors of the present, echoes of the past. But some dreams do something else entirely. They simulate. They experiment. They walk you down alternate timelines and ask, what if? You dream of staying in the city you left behind. You dream of saying yes to the love you were too afraid to trust. You dream of leaving the job you've endured too long. And it's not abstract. It's not theoretical. You see it, feel it, live it, for hours that feel like days. You are someone else. Not less you, just a different you. A version grown from the same seed, but shaped by different rain. When you wake, there's no immediate clarity, only ache, sometimes joy, often confusion. The dream doesn't end cleanly. You carry its aftertaste into your day. And somewhere between brushing your teeth and reading the news, you wonder, was that a message? Or a memory from another life I didn't live? Unlived. Paths aren't always grand. They're not always about destiny or dramatic forks in the road. Sometimes they're quiet. You dream of being a gardener, a teacher, a person who never moved away, a version of you who slowed down, or dared more, or never got hurt in that one specific way. And what the dream offers isn't instruction. It's invitation. It says, see what else might have been true. Why do we have these dreams? Are they nostalgia for roads not taken? Is it regret dressed in metaphor? Maybe. But sometimes they're more than that. Sometimes they are reminders that identity isn't fixed, that selfhood is not a narrow path, but a field of potential, that even if 1,000 doors have closed, others still remain, not in memory, but in choice, because unlived paths don't only point backward. Sometimes they hint forward. They show you who you could still become, not by erasing your life, but by expanding it. You see the version of yourself who speaks honestly, who creates, who rests. And you wake not with sorrow, but with possibility. The dream says, this is still within reach. And sometimes the dream brings contrast. You dream of the life you always thought you wanted. Wealth, fame, approval. But in the dream, you feel hollow, alone. And when you wake, you realize you're already closer to your truth than you thought. The dream wasn't fantasy. It was clarification. Unlived path. Dreams can also be healing. They allow you to meet versions of yourself that made different choices, not to punish, but to understand. You see the one who stayed in the toxic relationship, the one who never left home, the one who said no when she should have said yes. And you grieve her, you love her, you forgive her, because you know she too was doing her best. These dreams don't always resolve. Sometimes they end in the middle of a sentence. You're walking through a door when you wake. You're about to say something important. You're holding someone's hand and suddenly alone again. That's okay. They're not meant to complete. They're meant to expand. Because the point is not to rewrite your life. It's to remember that your life is not the only line your soul can walk. It's to humble the ego that believes this is all there is. And it's to soften the heart, which so often aches for what never was. So when you wake from one of those dreams, from a life not yours, but somehow deeply familiar, don't rush to label it as longing. Sit with it. Ask, what did this version of me want me to see? What wisdom does their life offer mine? Because maybe the version of you who chased the music, or loved without fear, or chose stillness over speed, they still live in you, not as ghosts, but as guides, whispered warnings. You're walking through a dream, and everything seems still, quiet, even beautiful. Then something shifts, a sound you can't name, a figure standing too still, a voice whispering words that don't make sense, but leave your skin cold. You wake unsettled, not because of what happened, but because of what almost did. You can't explain it, but deep down, you know, the dream was trying to warn you. This is whispered warnings, the subtle, coded messages carried through dreams that don't scream, but still shake you. Not all warnings arrive in thunder. Some come gently, like mist across the window. A repeated symbol, a broken pattern, a door that never opens. You may dream of boarding a train only to miss it each night. You may see someone you love slowly fading into shadow. You may be told in a whisper you don't recognize. Don't go there. And you wake up, heart racing, unsure whether it was fear or foresight. We often dismiss these dreams as anxiety, as the brain working through uncertainty. But sometimes they feel like more. They feel pointed, timed. And afterward, something in waking life changes. An opportunity feels off. A conversation confirms the mood. And you remember the dream, not in images, but in instinct. A knowing that moved before reason. Whispered warnings don't hand you answers. They don't show the event. They show the energy around it. You dream of a celebration, but everything tastes bitter. You see a beautiful house, but your feet won't let you enter. These are the codes. Your subconscious painting emotional truth, even when logic hasn't caught up. Sometimes these dreams are about others. A friend you haven't spoken to in years shows up weeping in your sleep. A sibling lost in fog. A child falling silent. You wake and call them, only to find they're going through something they hadn't told anyone about. You didn't know, but something did. Something beneath language and time. Science struggles with this. Warnings from dreams don't fit into categories. There's no data for a whisper. No peer-reviewed study that explains why a person dreams of falling 2 nights before the company collapses, or dreams of drowning before a relationship ends. But the stories exist, repeated, shared, quietly honored. In ancient traditions, dreams were treated as prophecy, not because they told the future, but because they revealed alignment. The dream didn't predict the event. It resonated with it, caught the ripple before the wave. And for those who paid attention, it offered preparation, not to avoid, but to face. Whispered warnings are not always about danger. Sometimes they point to imbalance. You dream of running endlessly, never resting. You dream of speaking, but no one hears you. These aren't metaphors. They're signals. Something in your waking life is unsustainable. Something inside you is trying to speak. And it knows that when you won't listen by day, it must whisper by night. Not every warning is urgent. Some are slow. A repeated symbol over months. A certain mood that visits your sleep again and again. The dream isn't trying to frighten you. It's trying to invite you into attention, into clarity, into alignment with something you've ignored. So how do you listen to something so quiet? You record, you reflect, you notice. You don't dismiss the dreams that leave a chill without explanation. You sit with them. You ask, what part of my life feels like this dream? Where in my waking world am I feeling a similar discomfort, a similar silence? And slowly, the dream opens. Not as a map, but as a mirror. And here's the deeper truth. The warning isn't always about the future. Sometimes it's about the present, about a truth you've already felt, but haven't yet faced. The dream doesn't show you what's coming. It shows you what's already here, hidden behind denial, distraction, or fear. To hear the warning, you don't need interpretation. You need honesty. You need to trust that your soul doesn't send messages for no reason, that what lingers after waking is meant to. And when the whisper comes, low, subtle, but unmistakable, you'll know. Not because it shouts, but because something in you finally stops pretending it didn't hear. Collective mind. You dream of a place you've never seen, vast, ancient, filled with symbols no language can explain. You walk among strangers who seem to know you. Their eyes hold stories. Their silence hums like memory. You wake with a sense of belonging, not to your family, or your city, or even yourself, but to something larger, something shared. This is the collective mind, the dream space where boundaries dissolve and what is personal becomes universal. We think of dreams as private, internal, singular. But what if some dreams are not created by you alone? What if, in certain states of sleep, we enter a space where minds touch, where thoughts mingle, images blend, emotions ripple outward and inward like shared breath? What if some dreams belong not just to you, but to us? This idea isn't new. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of symbolic memory common across all of humanity, a place where archetypes live, where myths are born, where the soul remembers what the mind forgets. But beyond theory, there is experience. Thousands of people report dreams that feel connected, shared settings, shared symbols, even shared people. Two strangers on opposite ends of the world dreaming of the same staircase, the same falling sky, the same faceless figure whispering the same words. Coincidence? Maybe. But maybe not. In moments of crisis, war, catastrophe, global shifts, people often report parallel dreams. Dreams of flooding, of collapse, of mourning. Not rooted in personal experience, but in atmosphere. As if the human mind, under pressure, reaches out beyond itself, seeking resonance, coherence, understanding. As if the dream becomes a broadcast, both receiver and signal. A pulse shared by a species trying to make sense of itself. You might think of the internet, millions of nodes connected by invisible threads. Now imagine something older, quieter, biological. A web of dreaming minds, not consciously linked, but synchronized through something deeper. Emotion, instinct, need. When one part of the web is in pain, the whole system hums. When one dreamer stirs, others shift. In this collective mind, the dream becomes language. Not spoken, not written, but felt. A shared symbol, seen in countless dreams. Water rising, birds flying backward, a room with no exits. These images don't belong to culture. They belong to consciousness. They rise when needed, reappear across generations, acting as emotional archetypes, alive, evolving. What's most humbling is this. When you enter the collective mind, you may dream not for yourself, but for others. You may carry a grief that isn't yours, a joy, a warning, a piece of insight that will only make sense to someone else. And perhaps someone, somewhere, dreams something for you. You'll never meet them, but the dream will arrive, and it will help. This is not mystical. It's deeply human. Empathy doesn't end when we sleep. If anything, it amplifies. Without the walls of ego, of identity, of history, the dreaming mind is porous. And in that openness, something beautiful becomes possible. Connection without condition. Of course, not all dreams tap into the collective mind. Many remain personal, shaped by your own wounds and hopes. But every once in a while, a dream arrives that feels bigger. It leaves you with the sensation that you touched something ancient, not a past life, not a deity, but a field, a we. These dreams don't give answers. They give orientation. They remind you that you are not alone, not just emotionally, but structurally, that the mind you call your own is made of stories, symbols, and instincts that stretch back thousands of years, that the dreams you dream tonight may echo through the psyche of another, decades from now. So the next time you wake from a dream that feels unplaceable, too large, too strange, too shared, don't dismiss it. Hold it with reverence. Ask, what might this dream be asking of not just me, but of us? Because there is a part of you that is not just you, a part that remembers things you never lived, a part that dreams not in singular voice, but in harmony. And if you listen closely, in the quiet of waking, you might still hear the echo of 1,000 minds dreaming together beneath the silence of sleep, realer than real. There are dreams that dissolve the moment you open your eyes, fading like fog under sunlight, soft and shapeless. And then there are others, the kind that grip your senses and refuse to let go. You wake not into clarity, but confusion. The sheets feel unfamiliar. The air tastes wrong, because something inside you knows where you just were, who you just were, felt more real than this, more vivid, more embodied. This is the realm of dreams that feel realer than real, where the illusion is not in the dream, but in the life you return to. You walk through a garden in your sleep and smell every flower. Feel the texture of the leaves, the weight of the wind. You speak to someone and remember the grittiness of their skin, the exact pitch of their voice. You look into a sky that holds not just stars, but meaning, as if the constellations themselves are speaking. When you wake, the colors of the real world feel dull in comparison. Your memories from the dream are crisp, tactile, undeniable. How is it possible that something completely imagined could feel more real than what we experience with open eyes? Neuroscience offers one answer, that the brain, during REM sleep, activates certain sensory areas even more intensely than it does during waking life. In dreams, we're not limited by the filters of perception. The mind isn't just receiving the world, it's creating it. And sometimes, that creation is so detailed, so emotionally charged, that it surpasses reality itself. Not in truth, but in intensity. But those who've felt it know there's more to it than heightened senses. Because what makes these dreams unforgettable isn't just how they looked or sounded, it's how they mattered. A moment in the dream carried more emotional truth than anything you've lived in weeks. A conversation with someone you've never met felt more healing than 1,000 real ones. You felt known, seen, complete, and you woke up grieving not a dream, but a reality you had to leave behind. These dreams don't always make sense. Sometimes they're not beautiful. Sometimes they're terrifying. But they carry a weight that defies logic. They leave a mark. And whether they last seconds or hours, they feel more authentic than the life waiting on the other side of sleep. Why does this happen? Maybe because in these dreams, we are free from the compromises we make while awake. We don't perform. We don't calculate. We exist. Purely. Honestly. Sometimes messily. But without distortion. And so the dream becomes a kind of truth. One not limited by physics or time or language, but carved from the raw clay of what the soul actually longs for. Some people experience entire lifetimes in these dreams. They meet children they never had, fall in love, build lives, grow old, and then they wake. And the loss is real. They mourn people who never lived, homes that never existed. And it's not delusion. It's memory, just not the kind the world recognizes. There are even reports of shared dreams, of two people dreaming similar places, events, symbols. These aren't always explainable, but in the moment, they feel grounded, like coordinates in a dimension just beyond the veil, accessible only in states where the mind has shed its usual walls. And then there are dreams that show you yourself, but not as you are, as you could be, as you were meant to be. You stand taller. You speak differently. There's no audience, no shame, only presence. And it doesn't feel idealized. It feels true, like the version of you that finally aligned with something ancient and essential. You wake, and for a moment, you hesitate to move. Because this body, this life, feels less yours than the one you just left behind. It's easy to dismiss these dreams, to label them vivid or strange or trick of the brain. But if you've lived one, you know the truth. It wasn't fantasy. It wasn't fiction. It was real. Not because it happened in the world, but because it happened to you. So what do you do with that? You honor it. You write it down. You revisit it. You ask what it gave you that waking life has not. What truth? What longing? What healing arrived in that space where everything felt more alive than life itself? Because maybe these dreams aren't mistakes. Maybe they are reminders that this world, while solid, is not the only one. That there are places you can only visit when the noise fades, when the eyes close, when the soul takes over. And in those places, you remember what it feels like to be whole, to be real, to be home, mirror self. You walk through a dream and turn a corner, and there you are. Not just in reflection, not as an image in glass or water, but standing, breathing, watching. A version of you, but different, sharper, softer, older, younger, more broken, or somehow more whole. And something deep inside you shifts. This isn't just a coincidence. It's not just symbolic. You are meeting your mirror self, a dream phenomenon where the boundary between who you are and who you could be momentarily vanishes. Most of the time, we don't see ourselves in dreams. We are the lens, the observer, the actor. But every now and then, something extraordinary happens. The dream places you outside of yourself. And what you see isn't random. It's revealing. The mirror, self, may look like you, but it feels deeper, as though you're witnessing a version of your soul formed under different skies. Sometimes, this reflection is gentle. You see yourself laughing, free in ways you've never allowed. You watch yourself dance, love, forgive, live without the burden of performance. And in that moment, you realize, this is who I could be if I let go. The dream isn't showing you someone else. It's showing you a part of yourself still waiting for permission. Other times, the mirror self is difficult to face. They're angry, cold, unfeeling. They speak truths you've buried. They echo your fears back at you. And yet, there is honesty in their eyes. Brutal, but precise. They don't attack. They mirror. And their presence stirs something we spend so much of our waking life trying to forget. That we are more than just the story we tell ourselves. These dreams are rarely random. The mirror self appears when the conscious and subconscious begin to align, when the soul is ready to reflect what the mind has ignored. They act like emotional punctuation marks. You don't just see yourself, you confront yourself. And sometimes, for the first time, you listen. There are countless variations. You might speak to your mirror self in a language you don't know, but somehow understand. You may fight them. You may embrace them. You may follow them through landscapes that feel designed just for the two of you. But no matter the form, the purpose remains to bring you face to face with what you've become and what you've denied. These aren't symbolic strangers. They aren't archetypes wearing your skin. They are you, made visible in a way waking life cannot always allow. And they carry messages only you can hear. You might dream of your mirror self standing at a crossroads, unmoving. You wake up with a decision already made. Or you see them surrounded by people you no longer talk to, and you feel the ache of unfinished conversations. Or they're sitting in silence, staring at you, not with judgment, but with longing, waiting for you to acknowledge their existence. Sometimes you switch places. Halfway through the dream, you become them, and suddenly the world shifts. Colors change, sound deepens. You move through the dreamscape with a different posture, a different breath. You wake up altered, not in personality, but in presence, as if a piece of you, long hidden, has re-entered the room. And here's the strange grace of the mirror. Self. They don't want control. They don't want to replace you. They want integration. To be seen. To be folded into the life you're actually living. Not to perfect you, but to complete you. This is why ignoring them doesn't work. When you suppress what you see in the mirror, it returns. Louder, stranger, more persistent. But when you sit with it, with them, and ask, what are you showing me? Something opens. Not understanding, but awareness. Not explanation, but truth. In spiritual traditions, this moment is a sacred crossing, a union of shadow and light, of false self and real self. The mirror self isn't there to disturb your sleep. They're there to end your illusion, to remind you that within you lives not just one life, but many. And only by facing the full spectrum, flaws, brilliance, doubt, strength, can you move through the world as someone real. So the next time you meet yourself in a dream, don't turn away. Watch, listen, ask, feel. Because maybe, just maybe, the version of you in that dream isn't someone you used to be, or someone you fear becoming, but someone you need to remember. Temporal collapse. You enter a dream, And suddenly, you're 10 years old again, barefoot on the floor of your childhood home. The next moment, you're ancient, moving slowly through a world that no longer exists. Then, you're back to now. But it doesn't feel like now. It feels like all times are happening at once. This is temporal collapse, the strange and often overwhelming sensation in dreams, where the boundaries of time dissolve and past, present, and future become a single, fluid experience. We spend our waking lives governed by clocks. Minutes, hours, deadlines, anniversaries. Time in waking life is linear, directional. It moves forward, always. But in dreams, time is not a line. It is a field. It folds. It overlaps. It bends toward memory and stretches toward possibility. You do not move through it. It moves through you. This is why a single dream can contain your childhood bedroom, a city you've never visited, and a conversation you haven't had yet, all stitched together with no seams. You remember things you haven't lived. You witness your own death and still go on speaking. You meet someone long gone, and they speak to you as if no time has passed at all. And in that moment, you don't question it, because in the dream, it feels right. Temporal collapse isn't about confusion. It's about comprehension on a level that the conscious mind cannot maintain. It's the soul saying, time is not what you think it is. You are not bound to one moment. Your being stretches far wider than your calendar suggests. Sometimes, this collapse comes gently. You walk into a room and feel your entire life layered into it. The past version of you sits reading. The present you walks by. The future you watches from the window. All are real. All are you. And the dream doesn't ask you to choose. It asks you to witness. Other times, the collapse comes like a storm. You're pulled through decades in seconds. You relive a wound from years ago, then leap forward into a future that hasn't yet arrived. And the dream spins you, not to confuse you, but to orient you, to remind you that the self is not a static point in time, but a continuum, a thread woven through every version of reality. This is why some dreams carry such a profound emotional charge, because when time collapses, insight compresses. You don't need explanation. You know. You suddenly understand why something that happened years ago hurt so much, or why something you're fearing hasn't truly come from the future, but from a buried past. In these dreams, time behaves more like emotion than physics. A single second can hold years. A glance can contain a lifetime. You wake up and say, "That felt like days." And you're right, not because of minutes passed, but because of meaning accumulated. Some traditions have long known this. Mystics, monks, dreamers, seekers. They speak of time as a spiral, not a line, of the eternal present, where all moments live inside the now. And when you dream, especially in the deep hours of night, you step into that spiral, not as a traveler, but as a witness to the whole of yourself. Sometimes, the dream places you back at a moment you've long tried to forget. But you don't just relive it. You re-understand it. You see it from another angle. You speak what was left unsaid. And in doing so, you begin to heal not just the memory, but the time that memory still holds hostage. Other times, the dream shows you a possibility, not prophecy, but invitation. You glimpse a moment that may come, if only you dare. A reunion, a choice, a truth you haven't spoken yet. And when you wake, you don't remember the details, but you feel the pull. A call from the future asking you to arrive. This is the gift and the challenge of temporal collapse. It breaks your grip on control. It forces you to feel time, not just count it. To remember that life is not made of consecutive days, but of moments that echo across decades, that collapse into each other when the soul is ready to see them all at once. So when you wake from a dream that doesn't seem to follow time, ask, what is being stitched together here? What thread from the past is trying to meet the thread from the future, right here, inside me? Because maybe when time collapses, what's actually happening is that you are expanding. Dream engineers. You're deep in a dream, and everything has structure. The landscape moves with intention. The events unfold like a lesson. A voice narrates without speaking. A path forms beneath your feet before you take a step. You don't feel like you're imagining this. You feel like someone, or something, is designing it as you go. This is the realm of the dream engineers, the hidden architects of your inner worlds, building the experience not from memory, but from meaning. Most dreams feel chaotic, shaped by fragments of waking life, faces, places, scattered emotions. But then there are the others, dreams that unfold with precision, not random, not messy, crafted. A city built around your fear. A hallway that leads to an answer. A stranger who appears at just the right moment to say the thing your soul needed to hear. These are not coincidences. They are constructs. And behind them, something, someone, is working. The dream engineers aren't characters. They don't speak directly. You don't see them. You feel them. In the dream's rhythm. In the way things happen, not just to you, but for you. They are the dream's logic, made personal. The invisible architects that design the journey you didn't know you needed to walk. Some say these engineers are simply higher parts of yourself, facets of the subconscious working behind the scenes. Others suggest they may be ancestral guides, spiritual entities, multidimensional echoes who assist you in your sleep. But whatever you believe, the sensation is the same. The dream knows what it's doing, and it's building something for you. You may enter a dream where you face a series of tests, each one revealing a truth you've avoided. You may move through a story that's clearly a metaphor, but with symbols too clean, too coherent to be accidental. You may even sense that you are inside a kind of simulation. And as strange as it seems, you trust it, because every part of the dream pulses with intention. This is the hallmark of a dream-engineered dream. It doesn't just happen. It teaches. It doesn't just reflect. It constructs. Some dreams come with architecture so detailed you remember every brick, every shadow, every sound. You know the shape of the rooms. You recall the number of steps. These aren't mere memories. They're designs. The dream engineers use the material of your mind, images, experiences, archetypes, and build something entirely new. Something not made to confuse you, but to guide you. And sometimes they let you participate. In lucid dreams, when you become aware, you may notice the structure behind the symbols. You may move a wall, ask a question, rewrite the sky, and still the dream responds, adjusts, like a co-creator beside you, not controlling, but collaborating. This is why some dreams feel more like initiations than stories. You walk a labyrinth, and at its center is not treasure, but a version of yourself you've forgotten. You follow signs through a crumbling city, only to arrive at a single word written on a mirror. The dream didn't just show you something. It built an experience that shaped you. And when you wake from these dreams, the change lingers, not because you remember the symbols, but because something internal has shifted. You are not who you were before you closed your eyes, and you can't quite explain why. The dream engineers don't want credit. They don't leave signatures. Their purpose is not attention, but transformation. And they work with a kind of intelligence that transcends language. They don't fix you. They reveal you to yourself, carefully, precisely, through story, through sensation, through sacred metaphor disguised as sleep. There are even times when these dreams arrive after great loss. You dream of an intricate world, a process, a room where something inside you is being repaired. And though you don't understand it, you feel it. That's the dream engineers at work, constructing healing, not through explanation, but through experience. So the next time you wake from a dream that felt too designed to be random, ask, what was being built? What part of me was being invited to grow? Because maybe you weren't just dreaming. Maybe someone was building a bridge to the next version of yourself. Quietly, carefully. From the inside out, memory storm. You slip into sleep, expecting quiet, but instead, the dream explodes. Rapid, chaotic, overwhelming. Places you haven't visited in years, people long gone, emotions you thought you'd outgrown. Scenes flash like lightning, one after another, disjointed but charged. You're not watching, you're inside it, drenched in memory, soaked in sensation. This is a memory storm, a rare kind of dream where the boundaries of the past break open, and your mind floods with pieces of yourself too vast to contain. It's not like normal remembering. Memory storms are not recollections. They are immersions. You don't recall your childhood kitchen. You stand in it, smell it, feel the texture of the old tile beneath your feet. You don't remember a heartbreak. You relive it, every breath, every word. The dream doesn't replay your life like a film. It rebuilds it around you. And it's never linear. One moment you're a child hiding under a bed, the next you're older, saying something you never had the courage to say. Then you're both, past and present, watching each other. The dream moves like a storm, swirling, unpredictable, true. You wake breathless, not because of fear, but because your soul just ran through every version of itself in a single night. Why does it happen? Sometimes the mind reaches a threshold, a point where it can no longer keep your stories compartmentalized. You've been carrying too much, unprocessed grief, unsaid apologies, forgotten joy. The dream doesn't ask your permission. It opens the vault, and everything comes pouring out, not to overwhelm you, but to release you. In a memory storm, the past is not passive. It's active. It speaks. You don't just see your younger self. You hear what they needed. You feel their hope, their pain. And suddenly, you realize they're still with you, not just as memory, but as energy, shaping every choice you make, every fear you carry. The storm doesn't bring them back. It shows you they never left. Some memory storms are gentle, a long walk through old places, conversations that never got to finish, a chance to say goodbye. Others are violent. You scream, you run, you witness your own silence where there should have been rage. These dreams are not pleasant, but they are sacred, because the mind is trying to reintegrate what the heart had to forget just to survive. You might wake and feel scattered, disoriented. Your present life may feel thinner, more fragile. That's normal. The storm tore through the walls you've built, and now the self must reassemble. Not as before, but with truth. These dreams can arrive uninvited, after loss, after breakthrough, before a major transition. The storm announces change. It says, to move forward, you must first touch where you've already been, not intellectually, somatically, in the body, in the dream, in that invisible space where memory is not a story, but a place. And sometimes you dream memories that aren't yours, a war you never lived, a house you never entered, a sadness with no source. This, too, is part of the storm. We inherit more than genetics. We carry echoes, lineage, collective grief, and when it builds, the storm clears it, not just for you, but for all those who came before. The beauty of a memory storm is that it doesn't demand understanding, only witnessing. You don't need to explain every image. You just need to feel it. Let it pass through. Let it show you the map of yourself you forgot existed. And in the aftermath, when the dream has passed, you will find pieces you didn't know you'd lost. The sound of a laugh, the scent of safety, the shape of your younger courage. They return, not as pain, but as possibility. You are not just surviving the storm. You are becoming whole through it. So when the night breaks open and the flood begins, don't resist. Stand in the center of the memory. Let it rain. Let it strip you of every false name, because what remains after the memory storm is what was always real. Eden effect. You find yourself in a dream where everything is soft. The light is golden. The air is alive. You're not walking, you're gliding. Trees bend as you pass. Water sings. Time stretches and vanishes. You are not afraid. There is no hunger, no pain, no doubt, only stillness, only presence. You feel loved, not by someone, but by everything. When you wake, there's only one word for it: paradise. This is the Eden effect, a dream state where you touch something so pure, so ancient, so right, that returning to reality feels like exile. These dreams are not frequent. They come like grace, often uninvited, often undeserved, and they do not unfold like stories. There are no plots, no conflicts, only a sensation of belonging, of union, of being home, even if you cannot name where or why. You may dream of floating through endless meadows that never repeat. You may sit in silence with beings who radiate warmth without words. You may simply be, without thought, without effort, without shame. And what's strange is not how beautiful it is, but how familiar. As if you're not discovering Eden, but remembering it. The Eden effect is not about opulence. It's not about dream castles or perfect weather. It's about rightness, an alignment between soul and space, between being and place. In this dream, you are whole, not because anything changed, but because the forgetting has stopped. The noise is gone. What's left is truth, felt, not explained. And then you wake, and it hurts. Not like heartbreak, more like ache, a soft sadness, a longing that clings to the skin. You move through the day, feeling slightly dislocated. The colors of life feel muted. The world feels too fast, too loud, too separate. And you realize the dream gave you a glimpse of something the waking world rarely offers: undivided self. Some say these dreams are glimpses of the afterlife. Others call them astral journeys, memories of soul origin, or returns to a divine template. But whatever you believe, the sensation is undeniable. You didn't imagine that peace. You entered it. You were it. And it changed you. This is the Eden effect's quiet power. It doesn't stay. It haunts. In the gentlest way. You can't force it to return. You can't chase it. But you also can't forget it. And because of that, you start searching, not for the dream, but for what it touched in you, what it reawakened, what it proved was possible. And maybe that's the dream's true purpose, not escape, but reminder. That peace is not distant, it's buried. That love is not something you earn. It's the field you've forgotten how to walk through. That presence isn't taught, it's remembered. Some who experience this dream begin to change, slowly. They simplify. They listen more. They pursue beauty, not as decoration, but as resonance. They become less interested in winning, more drawn to stillness. Because once you've touched Eden, even in sleep, you can no longer fully settle for noise. The Eden effect doesn't always appear as nature. It might be a single room, perfectly lit, a face that holds eternity, a melody with no end, a feeling that this is how things are meant to be. And what stuns you isn't the dream's splendor, it's the clarity, as if every cell of your body finally exhaled. And then, just before waking, something often happens. A parting, a soft goodbye. The landscape fades. The sound recedes. You may hear a voice, not loud, not urgent, say something like, "Remember this." And you do, not with language, but with longing. So what do you do once you've known Eden? You don't chase it. You live toward it. You create quiet where you can. You honor beauty when it arrives. You treat gentleness as sacred. You carry that dream like a secret garden, knowing that though you cannot stay, you have been there. And because of that, something inside you is forever changed. Because maybe Eden was never a place you left. Maybe it was the part of you waiting to be returned to, unfiltered you. You're in a dream, and something's different. There are no roles, no postures, no mirrors reflecting back who you're expected to be. You speak without rehearsing. You move without watching yourself. You feel without explaining. And in that strange, untethered freedom, you meet a version of yourself that feels pure. This is the unfiltered you, a dream state encounter with the self that exists beneath all performance, all adaptation, all noise. Most of the time, even in dreams, we carry shadows of our waking personas. We worry, we hesitate, we reflect old fears. But sometimes the dream strips all that away. You're no longer a daughter, a student, a partner, a stranger trying to be understood. You are simply you, raw, direct, soft, or wild, or still. You're not better. You're not worse. You're real. And what's most surprising is not how different this self is, but how familiar. Because deep down, you've known them all along, the unfiltered. You may laugh more freely, cry without shame, choose solitude without guilt. They don't perform courage. They are courage. They don't explain their dreams. They live them. And for those precious moments in the dream, you remember what it feels like to not have to prove yourself. There's no audience in this state. No clock. No algorithm measuring worth. There is only presence. And the dream doesn't embellish it. It doesn't place this version of you on a stage or give you a crown. It simply holds you, completely unedited, and lets you be. Sometimes you encounter the unfiltered you in the middle of chaos. A burning city, a storm, a collapsing structure. And yet, this version of you walks calmly, not because they are detached, but because they are centered. They are not holding on to illusion. They have nothing to protect. They are not better than your waking self. They are what's left when everything else is stripped away. Other times, the encounter is intimate. You look in the mirror and don't see the face you show the world. You see the softness behind your defenses, the wildness beneath your routines, the truth in your eyes. And you don't flinch. You welcome it. This version of you is not unreachable. They are not a fantasy. They are possible. The dream simply reintroduces you, reminds you. It says, you don't have to earn your own essence. And yet, waking up can be difficult, because reality rushes back. The roles, the expectations, the projections. You look in the mirror and reach for the mask again. Not because you want to, but because you've worn it so long, it feels safer than your own skin. But something has changed. After meeting the unfiltered you, something in you refuses to forget. You start noticing when your voice tightens in conversation, when you say yes to things that hollow you out, when your smile doesn't match your eyes, and little by little, you begin to undo. Not all at once, not dramatically, but with intention. You take off the mask when no one's watching. You speak a truth that trembles. You sit in silence without reaching for your phone. You remember that presence is not a performance. It's your nature. Some traditions say that dreams are not illusions, but reminders. That in sleep, we return to who we were before the world named us, before the shame, before the shaping, and the unfiltered. You is not just memory. It's guidance, a North Star shining from within. The goal is not to become that dream self in totality. The world still asks for masks sometimes, still demands versions of you that don't always align. But with each encounter, the filter weakens, and what shines through grows stronger. So the next time you dream of yourself, not as you should be, but as you are, pause. Don't dismiss it. That version of you isn't fantasy. It's home. It's the self beneath the noise, and they are waiting, not for applause, not for perfection, but for presence, for return, for the moment when you finally say, yes, this is me. Dream physics. You're falling, but not down. You're floating, but not up. You walk through walls, breathe underwater, speak without mouths, see without eyes. Gravity bends, time loops, distance folds into nothing. And none of it feels wrong. In fact, it feels natural. This is dream physics, the strange but consistent rules that govern the dream world, where logic dissolves, but order remains, just not the kind we recognize when we're awake. In waking life, we're bound by rules we never question. What goes up must come down. Two objects can't occupy the same space. Time only moves forward. But in dreams, those laws relax. And yet, it doesn't become chaos. Instead, a different system takes over, one made not of mass and force, but of meaning and emotion. In dream physics, things don't move because of energy. They move because of intention. You don't fly because of wings. You fly because you know you can. You don't fall because of weight. You fall because of doubt, or fear, or loss of focus. Movement becomes metaphor. Direction becomes desire. And time becomes a spiral. You visit your childhood, then leap into a version of yourself that hasn't yet happened. Hours pass in seconds. A glance lasts a lifetime. You are young and old and unborn all at once. Time in dreams doesn't tick. It responds. It bends around your awareness, expanding or collapsing based on what your soul is ready to hold. Space, too, obeys a different principle. You walk through a forest, turn a corner, and suddenly you're underwater. Then you're in a memory. Then a city that doesn't exist, but feels more real than anything you've known. There are no transitions, no borders. Space in dreams is not about geography. It's about state of being. You don't move through places. You move through versions of yourself. And yet, amidst all this fluidity, dreams have structure. Recurring doors, familiar staircases, rules you can learn. You may float one night, but sink the next. You may control the dream in one layer, but find yourself powerless in another. That's not randomness. That's architecture. The dreamscape has its own internal physics, not of atoms, but of symbols. And it's deeply consistent once you begin to notice it. Dream physics also introduces new senses. You don't just see and hear, you absorb. You feel the history of an object by touching it. You know someone's intent without them speaking. You understand entire landscapes, not by observing them, but by becoming part of them. Awareness is no longer local. You are the room, and the person, and the silence between. These laws don't just create strange experiences. They teach. They reveal how much of our waking reality is just habit, expectation, agreement. We expect to be heavy, so we sink. We expect to be late, so the hallway stretches. But in dreams, where belief is untethered, freedom begins. And sometimes that freedom scares us, because when there are no laws but your own, you become responsible for the world you're in. And still, there are limits. Ever tried to read a book in a dream? The letters shift. Ever try to count your fingers? They multiply. Try turning on a light switch? It fails. These aren't glitches. They're reminders that your dreaming mind is not simulating reality. It's simulating meaning. And when something resists control, it's asking to be respected, not solved. Some lucid dreamers learn to navigate dream physics like pilots. They shape the sky, shift the terrain, alter the story. But even then, the dream pushes back. Not cruelly, but wisely. It knows when you're forcing, when you're escaping. It gives you power, but only enough to see that power isn't the point. Because the deeper lesson of dream physics isn't how to fly. It's what flying feels like when you finally believe you can. It's what falling teaches you about surrender. It's what impossible spaces reveal about the limits you've placed on your own mind. So next time you dream of running in slow motion, of jumping into the sky, of stepping into a painting that becomes a world, don't ask, "Is this real?" Ask, "What rules are being rewritten inside me right now?" Because the dream world doesn't just show you alternate laws of nature. It shows you the unwritten laws of your own becoming. Rehearsed death. You're standing at the edge of something in a dream. A cliff. A void. A room that ends in silence. Or maybe it's a moment. You feel it coming, not as fear, but as inevitability. Then you fall, or dissolve, or disappear. You feel yourself die. But there's no panic, no resistance. Sometimes there's even peace. You wake up breathless, shaken, or strangely calm. You've just experienced a rehearsed death, a kind of dream where the psyche confronts its own ending, not to frighten, but to prepare. We tend to think of death as the ultimate unknown, but in dreams, we often know it before it arrives. The atmosphere changes, light shifts, time slows, and we accept it, not because we're brave, but because the dream suspends the ego's resistance. There's no crowd, no escape, just the moment you let go. And what follows is rarely darkness. Sometimes you become something else, a bird, a shadow, a vibration in space. Sometimes you dissolve into the landscape, into color, into light. Other times, you drift up and watch your own body from above. And more often than not, the sensation isn't terror. It's release. You wake with a sense of reverence, not because the dream was beautiful, but because it felt true. Rehearsed death dreams aren't nightmares. They're rehearsals in the deepest sense. They strip away everything you've clung to, identity, memory, form, and leave you with the question, what remains when I am no longer me? And that question haunts you, not in fear, but in quiet awe. Some believe these dreams prepare us for the real thing, not by showing us what comes after, but by easing our grip. They remind us that impermanence is not an error. It's the structure. You spend your waking life avoiding death. And then in sleep, you become it. And you find you are still something, still aware, still you, in some unspeakable, unraveling form. Sometimes these dreams revisit actual loss. You dream of a loved one's death or relive a goodbye you never said. But this time, the dream allows for a pause, a gesture, a farewell, and it heals something you didn't know was still open. Other times, the dream takes you through your own death in vivid, slow detail. A crash, a sickness, a fading heartbeat, and then silence. Then, something else. What that something else is varies. For some, it's a tunnel. For others, a field. For many, it's simply awareness without body. And it changes them. Not because they saw heaven or light or reunion, but because they saw themselves let go and survive the letting go. These dreams don't answer existential questions. They deepen them. They don't promise anything, but they offer something better. A practice. A space where you face the ultimate fear in safety. A space where death is not a wall, but a veil. Where endings are not conclusions, but convergences. You might wake up and cry, not out of sadness, but because the dream reminded you how precious life is. Or you may feel stillness, a silence that stays in your chest for hours. You move slower. You speak more gently. You see people as temporary miracles, not fixed roles. The dream didn't scare you. It recentered you. And sometimes you wake up laughing, because the fear that has ruled so much of your waking life suddenly seems lighter, not gone, but seen, held, disarmed. In ancient cultures, dreams of death were never considered bad omens. They were considered calls to pay attention, to live with more clarity, to make peace now. Because the truth is, we die every night. Every sleep is a surrender. Every dream is a letting go. And maybe, just maybe, that's the gift. To practice death is to practice presence. So when you next dream of your own ending, don't rush to forget it. Sit with it. Ask, what did I release in that dream? And what, even after death, remained? Because maybe the purpose of death in dreams isn't to prepare you for the afterlife. Maybe it's to teach you how to live. Subconscious. Keys. You wake from a dream with a strange object in your hand. Maybe it's a key, a stone, a word, a number. You don't know what it means, but it feels important. It lingers, not in your pocket, but in your mind. Throughout the day, it flashes behind your eyes. It doesn't explain itself, but it doesn't fade either. You've just received one of the subconscious keys, symbols or fragments that seem simple in form, but unlock entire corridors of the self. Not all dreams are structured. Many wander, but some are built like puzzles, and hidden within them are keys, not just metaphorical, but functional. A door you can't open until the right phrase appears. A locked chest, waiting for the number you forgot you knew. These elements don't just add texture. They are tools, placed by something deeper than thought, designed to open places in the psyche that waking life can't always reach. The subconscious speaks in code. And like any code, it creates locks and provides keys. But here's the secret. The key is often given before the door appears. You dream of a compass before you're lost. You dream of a name before the face arrives. You dream of a gesture, a whisper, a symbol. And only later does life unfold the context where it matters. And when it does, you remember. Not because of logic, but because the key fits. Subconscious keys don't always appear literal. Sometimes it's a person who says something in the dream that sticks with you. It's not the door, it's how you knock, or the river only flows when you let it. You wake not knowing why it matters, only to find days later that those words reappear, not in dream, but in choice. The dream knew something before you did, and the key it gave you was a sentence waiting to unfold. Other times, the key is a symbol, a circle drawn in sand, a repeated number, a map with no names. These aren't aesthetic. They're activations. They stir the subconscious not by meaning, but by resonance. You don't need to understand them. You need to feel where they land inside you. And sometimes, the key is emotional. A moment in a dream where you finally cry, or forgive, or scream. That act becomes the key. You wake up lighter, not because the dream was nice, but because it let you access a locked emotion, a chamber of self that had been sealed for years. This is why journaling dreams matters, because keys don't always work instantly. They're time sensitive. You may write something down and forget it for months, only to find, in a crisis or revelation, that the dream left you a message, a password to a door that just appeared. And you realize, I had the key all along. There's humility in this, because it reminds us that we are not fully in charge of our own evolution, that parts of us, deeper, quieter parts, are already working to grow, to heal, to guide. And when the conscious mind gets out of the way, those parts leave us gifts in the dark, not with noise, with symbol, with mystery. Some keys aren't meant to be used immediately. Some are meant to be carried, like talismans, like seeds. Their value is not in quick answers, but in the slow opening of perception. They help you recognize when something inside you is ready, not because you forced it, but because you listened. You may dream of a locked box. You may dream of being handed something and told, don't open it yet. That's not confusion. That's timing. The subconscious is careful. It knows when a door leads to something you're not ready to face, so it gives you the key early. It waits, and when the moment comes, it opens, cleanly, powerfully, quietly. The dream doesn't shout, here's what you need. It whispers, here's what will matter later. That whisper is the key. The moment you trust that, everything begins to shift. So the next time you wake with a detail you can't shake, a name, a phrase, an object, a color, don't dismiss it. Sit with it. Carry it like something sacred, because it might be the key to a version of yourself that's just around the corner. Waiting. Dream fractals. You find yourself in a dream, tracing the lines of a strange symbol. It repeats, a spiral within a spiral, a door inside another door, a person who becomes another version of themselves, then another, then you. The dream doesn't move forward. It folds. It echoes. It reflects. And with each layer, you realize you're not in a story. You're inside a pattern. This is dream fractals, the final recursive layer of the dream world, where symbols nest within symbols, and the self is seen not as one, but as many, endlessly reflecting itself. Fractals are shapes that repeat at every scale. The more you zoom in, the more you see the same form emerge. Nature is filled with them: ferns, snowflakes, coastlines, galaxies. And so are dreams. But in the dream world, the fractals aren't physical. They're psychic, emotional, narrative. The same theme, the same gesture, the same failure or longing appearing again and again, not to torment, but to teach. In a dream fractal, you may relive a moment from childhood, only to find yourself older, watching it happen. Then younger again, inside it. Then outside again, as someone else entirely. It's not confusion. It's recursion. The dream is showing you how your life folds in on itself, how certain stories echo through different stages in different clothes, and how none of it is random. Some dreams place you inside a place that changes every time you return. The house grows new rooms. The city rearranges itself. The people shift, but the feeling remains. That's a fractal, a single emotional shape expressing itself in infinite permutations. You may dream of losing someone over and over. Different people, same sensation. Or trying to reach something, an island, a staircase, a word, and never quite grasping it. And you wake wondering, why does this always return? But the better question is, what is this shape trying to show me about myself? Because fractals don't just repeat, they reveal. The pattern isn't the prison, it's the blueprint. The mind uses fractals to integrate complexity, to show you that what you thought was isolated, one decision, one fear, one relationship, is actually part of a larger map, a deeper rhythm. And once you begin to see the pattern, the dream changes. It doesn't end, it evolves. You're no longer trapped in the loop. You're moving through it. You begin to recognize that the mother you argue with in one dream is the same energy as the teacher who silenced you in another, and the friend who betrayed you in a third. Different faces, same core. And once you see the shape, you can finally speak to it. Not react, not run, but respond. The dream listens. The pattern opens. Sometimes dream fractals appear visually. You'll see sacred geometry, endless tunnels, spiraling staircases. But most often, they appear as structure, a cycle, a motif. You argue, then forget, then argue again. You climb, then fall, then climb again. The point isn't to break out, it's to go deeper, until the dream folds into itself one last time and gives you something new. Not an answer, a shift. Some say these dreams mirror the shape of consciousness itself, that the soul unfolds in patterns, that what you experience at one level, grief, love, awakening, is echoed at every other level of your life. And the dream is simply showing you that fractal. Here is the sorrow at age 6. Here it is at 16. Here it is now. What will you do with it this time? It's easy to get lost in dream fractals, to feel like you're looping endlessly. But if you look closely, you'll see Every loop is slightly different. A word you didn't say before, a gesture you changed, a door you finally opened. You're not stuck. You're spiraling inward, toward a center that cannot be spoken, only known. And sometimes, when you reach that center, the dream pauses. There's no more movement, no more change, just you. Whole, not fragmented, not echoed, just you. The core beneath the pattern. And you wake, not in confusion, but in stillness. Because you saw the shape of your own becoming and recognized it not as chaos, but as design.